Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch, sponsored by Masses Restaurants, 5 locations in St. Louis. STLmasses.com is where you can find all the menu items and how to get there. Again, if you're watching a lot of these newer interviews that we're doing here on the YouTube, drive through St. Louis, although my next guest says no one is from St. Louis, and he's a 2-time guest on the show, and I'm excited he's back. Hello, Jackie Martling. Jackie, the joke man, Martling.
How are you doing? Thank you for having me back. Let me ask you, I don't remember what we talked about last time. I told you about the last time I was in St. Louis, I'm sure.
Yeah.
When I worked the Funny Bone, and in between shows, I came out and bumped into Jay Leno, the Russian guy.
Yakov Smirnoff.
Yakov Smirnoff and Larry Miller. The three of them were working at some big theater that was across the street from the Funny Bone. And also, when I first joined the Friars, when I wanted to join the Friars, I went to lunch one day, and there was a four-top, and there was 3 people sitting at the four-top. And it was so crazy, but it turned out it wasn't as crazy as I thought. But it was Henny Youngman and the author, James Michener, and Stan Musial. I'm like, how bad do I want to be the 4th person at that table? What the hell are they talking about? I'm sure it was just Henny telling jokes. But I guess Michener and Stan Musial were good friends. Like maybe they were both from St. Louis or something like that. I don't know.
Well, Stan the man is a... Yes. I've heard of Stan Musial. This Henny Youngman fella I've never heard of. Take my wife, please.
It's all going so back. It's so far back. You know, wow.
So what are you up to these days? We've talked to you, I think, right as COVID started, and it looks like you haven't had a haircut, but it looks like you're just hanging out in the house, right?
No haircut, no shave. I do have the social distancing thing down finally. I just walk around with my cock out, and if you can see it, you're too close.
I love that laugh. Yeah, no, that's good. That's interesting. I'm trying. I
have one joke. The guy knocks on his neighbor's door and he says, "Hey, since COVID hit, I haven't seen your wife." His neighbor says, "Oh, she's out in the garden." He says, "Well, I looked out there. I didn't see her." He says, "Well, you got to dig down a little."
I don't know. I don't know if you check out YouTube, but I think the first guy to venture out during COVID was Norm Macdonald. And he did a whole set about, hey, how's it feel, everyone? We're going to be dead soon. It's just did a Norm Macdonald set, and it was great. I don't know if you're a Norm fan, but I am.
I didn't see that, but I am a huge Norm Macdonald fan. I wrote a joke for him that he used on Saturday Night Live, and I don't know if you remember that far back, but he used to do an impression of, who was the guy who had a bad arm that always had a pencil in his arm?
Bob Dole.
Bob Dole. And he did Bob Dole. And he would fall and he'd do stuff. And I suggested that, he had the pencil, that one day on Saturday Night Live that he'd fall down. And then when he gets back up, the pencil is sticking out of his hair. And he did it. It was a big laugh. And I was like, hey, I made it to Saturday Night Live.
So he came into the Stern Show dressed as Bob Dole and did the whole Dole thing for about 20 minutes, I remember. I thought that was hilarious because you guys didn't normally have guys come in character, but he came in doing his Bob Dole. Did you write any of his jokes as he came in for the Stern Show?
No, I wouldn't have written any of that. That would have been all Norm. I don't remember. Of course, I remember giving him that joke, but I don't remember him coming in dressed as that. He has such a scattered memory that there's years I don't remember. But he's so funny, and he loves long, stupid jokes, and so I bond with him about that, and we're both Artie Lange fans, and we cross paths in a few places, great guy, great guy.
I ask everyone, have you heard from Artie Lange lately? What's going on? I know we haven't heard from him in a while.
I'm not at liberty to say anything, but he's fine.
Oh,
it's funny. There's a documentary. It's all done. There's a documentary called Joke Man, and I'm very thrilled about it. But the reason we made it was because we wanted to take it to film festivals. Because believe it or not, 20 years later, people are just as interested in my time on the Stern Show as they were 20 years ago. I know it doesn't sound irrational, but it's really true. And people come up and they say stuff and ask me stuff, and they say, I'm sure you're sick of hearing this. And I say, listen, if I ever get sick of hearing this, put a bullet in my head. Because it was the most fun time in my life. It was just wonderful, you know. And Artie agreed to be in the documentary, but then he screwed up and he got arrested and he wound up in rehab. Well, that's that. It's taken so long to get the goddamn documentary finished that he got done with rehab, done with jail. He got back out. He's one of the best things in the whole documentary, which is just great, you know. And he's such a good guy, you know. And the documentary's got like Willie Nelson and Penn and Artie Lange, and you know, and it's, you know, it doesn't have any of the main Stern characters, which is very pregnant omission, but obviously they were asked. But it's great. But I want to go from film festival to film festival, because a lot of times when there's documentaries, the most interesting thing is asking the questions. You know, when you watch a documentary on television, you always like have 1,000 questions for the person that made it, and especially the Stern Show. But you know, there's no festivals, and you know, I know I can put it online. I know you can even take questions online, but it just ain't the same, you know. So we're hoping that luckily Trump says that the COVID is over, so hopefully we'll be going out tomorrow with the documentary.
Yeah, I mean,
but who knows?
He's a doctor, Dr. Trump.
Oh, jeez. Don't even get me going. So, at any rate, the documentary is finished, and it's wonderful, and I'm thrilled about that. I've been doing cameo.com, which I first heard of years ago, and I thought, listen, I have not sunk to where I'm sending out videos of myself saying hello. And then I saw that everybody was doing it, and now I do a bunch of 2, 3, 4, 5 a day, and I don't charge much money, and it was made for me, you know. Call up Brad and tell him happy birthday, break his balls, tease him about his dick, you know, tell him his wife's cheating on him, tell my Uncle Eddie he's the funniest guy in the world.
Who's been talking to you? Hey, who's been calling you?
But all this stuff, and it's made for me, like 2 minutes of me telling jokes and fooling around, and most people are thrilled just to get my stupid laugh on tape. And I got like 65-star ratings, and they keep coming in. It's not much money, but it's so funny. If you're a comic, getting laughs is your life's blood. And my laughs mainly come from me, which you know, because I can do my act in an elevator. So if somebody hires me to do a COVID, I tell 5 or 7 jokes and laugh at them. And I do that a couple times a day. It's like my methadone. It gets me to the next day. You know, that's like my little pump. You know, and doing these podcasts. I love doing these podcasts, you know.
Well,
it's fun, you know. I yak too much, I know, Brad.
No, people love to see you and hear you. But I have to go back to the original question. So you're not at liberty to say, but Artie's okay. Who's telling you not?
Yes, huh?
Who's telling you you're not at liberty to say, I wonder?
No, there's no wondering. There's no wondering. You know, it came very roundabout. I don't have any inside information. It's just, I just know he's okay. Which I was thrilled to hear.
I'm always
he's not ready to go to stand up, but he's doing fine. You know,
kind of a psychiatric thing, possibly.
Who knows? You know, he can't be any crazier than I am. Jesus Christ! I'm 1,000 years old. I'm still waiting to go out and tell jokes. You know.
Well, like I always say on this podcast, especially when we talk Stern, there's that 2 eras, your era and Artie era, to me, and they're both great. I mean, I feel like there's this line of demarcation. What was it like? Did you get to listen when Artie was on? Did you check the show out after you left?
I never listened to the show before I was on, when I was on, after I was on, after Artie was on. I have never listened. The only time I ever listened was way, way, way in the beginning. When I first went on a couple times, when I was going on once a week on Tuesdays on WNBC, and I actually was tuned in on a very crazy day to have been listening. Because what happened was I would hand him a few ideas, and I would listen to see if, you know, because when I first handed him some ideas, he'd like look at me like I was crazy, and then I listen, and all of a sudden I hear him doing the stuff I gave him, and then the next week I'm like, here's some more stuff, very sheepishly, you know, thanks, you know. But I was listening the day, and This doesn't exist as far as I know, and I know it happened. So I don't know if it got buried or edited, but it's an infamous day that was in private parts. I used to kill in Philadelphia, 1979, 80, years before I met Howard. I was working in Philadelphia at the Comedy Works, the Comedy Factory Outlet, Bananas, the Comedy Cabaret. It was a whole thing in Philadelphia, and it was great. Believe it or not, I was old friends with John DeBella, who years later wound up being head-to-head with us in Philadelphia. But I knew him from Long Island when he was a disc jockey. And there was a girl who came on, and Gary came in and said, "Hey, Howard, there's a girl here that wants to take off all the clothes." And, it's radio. So, of course, at this point, people didn't know that what went on, everything that went on in that show that he described went on. The only thing that didn't go on, when he said a girl was a 10, she was a 3. But she was really there. You know what I mean? Oh, look at that girl with the perfect body. She was a pig, okay? But she was there. And this girl came in, and Gary said, "This girl wants to get nude." Howard said, "All right." And she walked in, and she was wearing a fur coat. And Howard said, "Who are you?" And she said, "My name is Maria. I'm a comic, and I work the door at the Comedy Factory Outlet in Philadelphia, and my favorite comedian is Jackie Martling." And I was standing on a little stepladder fixing something, and I distinctly remember that because I don't fix anything. I don't know how to fix anything. The fact that I was standing on a ladder, I was probably changing a light bulb or something, and I almost fell off. I couldn't believe it. And then, of course, she took off her fur coat, and she was naked underneath. And it was an infamous day. And I actually, in the private parts, I wasn't there that day, of course, but I was sitting next to Howard in the movie as Jenna Jameson slowly took off her clothes, and we did like 10 takes of it. So I'm sitting there watching Jenna get undressed and dressed and undressed and dressed. But I've never heard the replay of that, of her saying that. And it was so crazy because this girl, Maria, was a pretty nice-looking girl. She used to fool around with Richard Jenny and a bunch of the guys. And she wound up marrying a journalist from Philadelphia that hated the Stern Show and always wrote really crappy stuff about the show. His name was Stu Bukowski. And what's great is you could look all this up on, it's all hearsay, but now it's all on Google. Anything. You can find it all on Google. For all I know, her saying that is somewhere on Google. I don't know. But no, I never listened to the show. And people would, for years, for 20 years, 40, however many years, 30 years, people would say, "Oh, bullshit, you don't listen." I don't. I never did. Like when we were on Best Of or stuff like that, I didn't listen to the show. And after I was off, if I listened to the show and it made me laugh, I'd feel bad. And if it didn't make me laugh, I'd be trying to think of something funny to send them. It's really funny. I went out to Los Angeles. I got to be very good friends with George Clooney's personal assistant. And she took me around the Warner Brothers lot. And this is when they were making Perfect Storm. And they had a big, huge pool with all technical equipment. But that's where they shot the water shots. And we walked around the set of ER. And we went on the set of Central Perk. And I got a picture of me sniffing Jennifer Aniston's director's seat, And he said, "Come on." And Amy Cohen, her name was, says, "Come on."
How did it smell? I have to ask.
I never washed my face since, so I'll mail it to you.
Okay.
So I go walking up the stairs, and Gloria Margulies,
Julianne.
What's the first? Julianne Margulies and Gloria Rubin from ER are in their trailer, and as we walk up the stairs to go meet them, I hear my laugh because they were listening to the Best Of, and we were rolling. And I walked in, and I swear to God, they were as glad to see me as I was to see them. And I mean, those are two, they're still beautiful, but they were beautiful young women. And wow, and I had big hugs, and wow, we're such big fans. And it was just, spectacular. But that's the most I heard of the show is hearing 2 seconds what they're in there listening to the Best Of, which is just so great,
Well, we covered last time in long form. Again, you're leaving the show, but I'm curious how you ended back at Sirius. You did the joke hunt, and it was funny. It was a great, funny show. How did you actually get the chance to go back? I know you were doing appearances on Howard's show a little bit, so now you're on Howard 101 with your.
Very, very rarely. That that is one for the ages. And, it's like a Trump story. There's enough versions the other way that makes me sound full of crap. But what happened was Sirius XM had just gotten going. And it's funny, years before it, I got a call to go out to Las Vegas to this Consumer Electronics Show because they were doing a demonstration of XM because XM was up. Sirius wasn't even up yet. Like Meg Griffin and some people were out there promoting it and everything, but they didn't even have satellites up yet. And I went on with this guy, Mark Parento, who was he's dead now, but he was such a character. His main claim to fame was he got the cocaine for Aerosmith. But he was the top morning drive jock on WBCN in Boston for 20 years. Great guy. And at my book party in 1998, he said, hey, we want to play your CDs on the radio. I said, you're crazy. There's not 3 seconds of a CD of mine you can play. He said, no. It's going to be satellite radio, uncensored. And then all of a sudden, here he is. XM happened, and he put me on there, and he's kicking ass. And then years later, I'm off the show, and I had this crazy Israeli girlfriend. I really loved her. And she said, you really got to get off your ass and go do some shows, do some jokes. And it had been maybe a year, I don't know exactly, but they were opening up a place called the Laugh Factory in Times Square. There's a Laugh Factory, a very famous place called the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles. And this was the Laugh Factory East at the corner of 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. And it's the grand opening, so I go down there. It's Old Home Week. It's every comic I ever met, every booker, and they're all so glad to see me. I felt like $1 million. I went up and did 10 minutes and destroyed the place. And this young guy comes up to me and says, hey, I'm such a big fan. He says, I do a show on XM. I guess it was Sirius. It wasn't Sirius XM yet. I had been down to XM in Washington, but this was Sirius. And he says, I do a show at noon. You should come by. And what it was on, I don't know if it was called Raw Dog yet, but it was on a comedy channel, and it was a request show. But instead of requesting Bruce Springsteen, people would request Henny Youngman or Chris Rock or Red Fox. And, of course, everybody they requested I had a story about. So I'd be on with this guy, Phil Iazetta, for like an hour or two, and people went nuts. They loved it. He's now he programs all the comedy for iHeartRadio now out in Las Vegas. A great guy, old friend. So I'm going on there once a week, once every other week. It was a whole big deal. And they wanted me to be the voice of Raw Dog, which is such a big deal. It was a contract, and I think it was a couple $100,000 a year for a couple of years, and it was, and just wraparounds. Like, that was Red Fox. Here's, I'm using old names. That was Norm Macdonald, and here comes Artie Lange. And you record these in advance. Like a best of show type thing. And all of a sudden, they come to me one day and they say, the guy who's representing me says the deal's off the table. They think they're going to get Howard Stern to come to Sirius. And I was like, why don't they just tell me they don't want me? There's no way Howard is leaving his gig, because to me, the whole show was dancing around the rules. What good is that show if you're allowed to do whatever you want? And then a couple of months later, sure enough, Howard Stern coming to Sirius XM, which at least I found out they were telling the truth. So I'm still going on Phil's show once in a while. And, of course, the whole time I'm going on Phil's show, somebody comes, Jackie, you got to come see Howard. And so I saw Howard's studio in every incarnation as they were putting it together and piecing it together. And each time it was like a garden. It was growing a little bit more, a little more. And I will never know whether this was set up. I will never know. But one day, me and Phil come walking out after his show, and Gary Dell'Abate's standing there. And this is after Stern had started that series. Hey, Jackie, want to come to the studio? And I'm like, sure. I had seen it, but I didn't want to tell him that because I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. So he went and he showed me the studio, which was really impressive, of course. And when we left out of the different door, Tim Sabian was standing there. I don't know if you know who that is. But he wound up, booking the Stern shows for most of the time at Sirius until that new woman came and they butted heads or whatever. So I came walking out and Tim said, "Hey, Jackie, have you got a show on Sirius?" I said, "No, I would love it, but nobody, I never could believe I got no phone calls. I was a writer for the most popular, funniest show ever. And the minute I left Stern, my phone never rang. I don't know whether they're afraid of me, afraid of him, whatever that was. Maybe they thought I asked for too much money. No offers. Nothing. Not even to come shave somebody's polar bear. Nothing. So I come walking out. He says, "You want your own show?" And maybe I could do something about that. I said, "Well, I would love that." He said, "Well, Howard had 2 stations, 100 and Howard 101. He says, "Well, maybe we'll get your show on there." And he's talking to me, and I met with him a couple of times. And finally, one day I went in and said, "What are you doing, Tim?" He said, "Well, we're looking for a place. How are we gonna?" And I looked up at the calendar, and it was 101, and it showed the different, 8 o'clock, not whatever. I said, "Right there, Tuesday, 5 o'clock. It's open. Write me in. I'll take that." He says, "All right." And I came up with the idea for Jackie, to name it Jackie's Joke Hunt. And an old friend of mine who had interviewed me to hopefully make it into my book, I asked him to be my co-host. And then Tim says, "Oh, yeah, I'll talk to Howard about it." So Howard calls me up and says, let's go have dinner. I met him for dinner, and we sat there. And I always get myself that we ate at this little Italian restaurant across the street from his apartment. It's an old New York restaurant, like a single storefront. And in the back is like the garden. And it was like, it's old New York, so there's a very low door. But it's got all like, curtains on it and everything. And we go walking through, Max's head on the door jamb. And of course, I'm hysterical. And the whole time we're out there eating, he's got a welt on his forehead. And as we're talking, my eyes are going up, and I'm seeing the welt, and I'm smiling, and he's getting more and more pissed off. But I said, yeah, Tim said, I could have a show, we're going to do a show, blah, 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 fine. That worked its way to Jackie went to Howard and begged for a show. That's what that, gyrated into, which I didn't care. I mean, that was after the fact, and that's how I wound up with Jackie's Joke Hunt. And they paid me terribly. It was supposed to be 1 hour a week. They replayed it 5 or 6 times a week, which I was thrilled. I couldn't have been more thrilled. We got paid terribly. And after like 6 years, we decided we got to go out with Tim and tell him we're demanding a raise. And we went out to dinner with Tim. And just before we're going to ask him for a raise, he says, "We're cutting you guys down to once a month." So I said, "I don't want to be on once a month. Nobody will ever know we're there. So we'll do once a week for the same money." So instead of getting a raise, our pay was cut by a factor of 4. What we were getting for one show, we were now getting for 4 shows. But we did it for 8 years, 402 shows called Jackie's Joke Hunt, all different names, all great, made up emails, made up news, made up everything. We had Sid Bernstein on and Billy West. I had the original cast of the Jersey Boys. It could not have been more fun. Pat Cooper would come on and rant, and it was just spectacular. And then one day, they just canceled the show.
Was that MARCI?
No rhyme, no reason. Just yanked the rug. It was a week before Thanksgiving. They canceled the show. And then it was Howard's 60th birthday party thrown by Sirius XM and the Stern channels for Howard. And me and Ian were not invited to Howard's 60th birthday party. We were on the station, one of his stations, and we were on Sirius XM. And all my friends like, "Jackie, let me be a +1 to go to Howard's party." And nobody would believe me when I told them we weren't invited. And then the Christmas party, we've been there 8 years, and we weren't invited to the Christmas party. And people say, "Jackie, are you bitter?" I'm not bitter, but all I do is tell the truth. And what's up with that? And I'm telling you, it's so strange. The bottom line is, if I went to Howard's 60th birthday party and one person came up to him and said, "Hey, Howard, it was really good to see Jackie again," it would have wrecked his night. And I know that sounds pompous. I don't give a shit. That is how do you explain that? But it was eight great great years. And I and I'm allowed to do whatever I want. They should be out as podcasts, but I've just never done that, And then they hold up because it's just dirty jokes. It's not nothing time constricting, just stupid, two Jews go into a bar with poop, it's, that's me.
You mentioned the documentary and the fact that they wouldn't. So do you I mean, you just still think Howard just doesn't want any part of the Jackie name anymore? Or like, is he he's protective of his guys?
In his heart of hearts, I don't know. Fred responded and said, listen, I would love to do it, but I can't. And I can't. And I didn't know I can't. Gary didn't respond. I went to dinner with Robin, I guess, years ago, but must have been before we actually did the documentary. But she didn't respond, and I didn't even bother asking Howard, I mean, I know I must have emailed them all a couple times, like, just, because you don't know what if the email didn't get to them, and then somebody goes, hey, how come you weren't in Jackie's documentary? Oh, he never asked me, But it is strange, I am still very close friends with everybody I ever met. I'm talking about grammar school, high school, college, and I don't see them every 5 minutes, but we're still, laughing about all the stuff that happened and wow, the great old days and how are you doing? And I have no communication with these guys. And I'm telling you, me and Howard couldn't have been more close. I mean, I was 2 or 3 feet away from him 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 15 years. And we shared a brain. And he totally trusted me. I'd write something and put it down. He'd start reading it before he even read it. And he'd start reading it out loud. And it's, I don't know. It's one for the history books. I'd love to know what a psychiatrist would make out of it. Like I wonder if in his heart of hearts is like, Jackie's really a prick. He asked for more money, or what a dick. And because I didn't say, hey, I want my name in lights, or I want it to be Howard, Robin, and Jackie. All I said was, hey, you're holding up Fort Knox here. Throw a spadeful over here. And so I'm not really sure exactly. Because I don't think he had intentions of changing the show. And that's why he said, you know what, I just won't give Jackie the money because I want to change the show. I think that was an end product as opposed to a reason. But once again, who knows? Yeah. I don't know that.
Well, another guy.
It's interesting. And I never get sick of talking about it because I still don't know any of the answers. I do not know the answer.
Well, I think that's why people are they just don't understand the way he works. Especially you go and then you can't be talked to. Although it's crazy that you did come back, because Stuttering John will never be allowed back. Artie, I'm assuming, would never be allowed back. But Scott the engineer, I think, just was let go. I don't know if you talked to Scott, but have you had any conversation?
No, I never talked to Scott, and I don't know that whole thing. And I know his wife got sick and passed away. But, it's really funny because, people, Jackie's the biggest opportunist in the world. But, when Hank the Angry Dwarf died, me and him were pals. But I couldn't go to his funeral because it would have been me, like, trying to stick my nose in. You know what I mean? So I just made that decision that, that's not fair. It's his funeral. It's not a Stone Show reunion, So I don't, I don't know the ins and outs of John with Howard. And I tell you one thing, nobody loves Howard more than Artie Lange. Artie loves him. I mean, anything Artie did with drugs or booze or getting in trouble, he didn't do that to anybody but Artie. He wasn't out to hurt anybody. The only person he ever hurt was himself. And he just is a good guy. And, I'm not a psychiatrist, maybe not comfortable with success. Maybe that's why I left. Maybe I never planned on having this much money and people knowing who I was, I started playing the guitar to get laid in 8th grade. I ran the snowball, you know what I mean? So who knows? Who knows?
I was always curious, how did callers get through? I don't know if you're not in the back room, but I know Stuttering John took calls. It seemed like impossible to ever dial in. I think I tried dialing in once or twice just for fun. How do I know there's some guys that get in? There's a special, but tell me that minutia of, and
I have no idea that. I'll tell you that Stuttering John answered the phone for years. It was a Howard Stern show. I used to Howard Stern show. Who am I speaking to? Howard Stern show. And for years, John would say, "Howard Stern show. Do you work on Wall Street?" Howard Stern show. You work on? And the guy said, "Yeah, I work on Wall Street." John said, "You got any IPOs? Got any IPOs?" And he networked the piss out of himself, and wound up making money with guys that he met answering phones. But I think it was pretty much hit or miss. But in the early days, I don't think there was any sophistication where it came up saying, "This is Harry and he's got a story about Jackie," or "This is Charlie." I'm not even sure how it worked. I think it was just kind of random, Although I'll tell you, there were times people would call in and, like if I screwed up or something happened, the people would get through. I can't answer your question. I don't know. Like my jetty went missing. I made Howard announce it on the radio at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they made so much fun of me. And like 5 minutes later, Gary came in and said, "Hey, Howard, the Nassau County Marine Police are on the phone. They got Jackie's float." Like everybody freaked. It was the winter, so there's things floating in the middle of Long Island Sound. So they looked and they saw the ladder sticking up. But how they knew where to call to get through, I mean, it's the police, but there were, and you're right, there were people that got through all the time. Maybe they had a more special number. That was not my pay grade. Whoever got through, I wrote jokes about. That's all I know.
I'm going to figure this out. Tell me just a little bit about the minutia. We're kind of wrapping up here, but the day, the meeting. I know there was a Thursday meeting. I don't know if this is before your time or if you still guys had a meeting to talk about the next week and who's coming in and let's do this. But tell me.
We started doing that. Well, we used to have meetings when we had the Channel 9 show, which was such a joke. I mean, it was a free-for-all, just like my favorite year. And that lasted like 2 years. Years later, I always thought that when Benjy joined the show, that's when the show started ending. And no real reflection on him, but that was just the timing. And we would all get together like on a Tuesday or Thursday, and we all would sit in a circle. I'd sit next to Howard, and Robin be on the other side, and Fred. Usually Fred was still playing the commercials that had been backed up out the wazoo. And the interns, everybody was involved in the meeting, and the idea that people were going to pitch ideas. So people would pitch ideas, and I'd make fun of them, or I'd whisper something to Howard, and we'd break balls. And Benjy would have the world's worst ideas, and Gary'd try and get something accomplished, and he gets so mad at me because I'd get Howard laughing. Gary'd be trying to talk, I'd be like, look at his ass, And those were but I'll tell you, they were so funny. If anybody had the presence of mind to put a camera on those meetings, it was real show business, real funny, real raw, real crazy, the guts of the operation. But you'd never see that because there was nothing that made Howard the king of the mountain. It was a level playing field. So if he said something funny, or if I said something funny, or if Robin said it was all equal. He didn't have his microphone on 10, and everybody else was on 2. So, I don't think those ever saw the light of day. But they were great fun. I don't know if we ever got 2 ideas out of them. But I look forward to them. I thought they were really, really fun. I think we were still doing them when I left. I really don't remember. We might have just, one day Howard might have said, "You know what, this is a waste of time and not do it anymore." They might still be going. I don't recall. But if they talk about them on the air, how much fun they weren't exaggerating. They were really, really fun,
You mentioned Benjy. I just thought of this, too, because he did show up while you were there. So you were already the head writer, but they've got this Benjy character, and he starts sitting next to you. Isn't that in your head?
That was, and it's no aspersion to him, no aspersions on him. But to me, that was Don Buckwell. I don't know if even Howard, that was their way of telling me that I'm expendable. we had, it's like a double play combination. The ball gets hit to second base. The second base guy throws it to the shortstop. Shortstop steps on second base and throws it to the first baseman, and we got a perfect double play. There's not room for a third person there. We had the ideal sit. The show couldn't have been funnier. Very often we were backed up with jokes for Howard, and so often me and Fred would write the same thing because our minds were in the same place. So I'm writing what I'm writing, and I'm also reading what Fred's writing and judging what's going in front of Howard. And all of a sudden, one day, Gary says, hey, Benji's going to come in and sit in and do on the news. So I originally it was supposed to be a big studio with Howard and Robin and Jackie and Fred and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, it's Howard, and all of a sudden, they got like a tower of tapes where you could hardly see me and Fred, and we're behind there. And I got this little space to write jokes and put them in a bin with a microphone, with a camera looking down at the bin. I put my joke in, so all of a sudden I got this guy Benjy sitting next to me in this small space. So Fred's handing me jokes, Benji's handing me jokes, I'm writing jokes. We're working in real time. We're moving at the speed of light. So I got to read what he wrote, read what Fred wrote, read what I wrote, decide which one to put, bang, bang, bang. And there's no room. And then we go to commercial. I have to get up. I have to climb over Benjy to go take a leak and get coffee. And next thing you know, he's in there for more. I don't know if he was in for the whole show, but he was in there for longer and longer and longer each time. And I think, he was signed with Buckwald. Like it was Don Buckwald's way of saying, hey, if you step out of here, there's a guy right there. Because Don, I don't think, ever had any conception of comedy and how Howard and me were connected at the hip and the dynamics of the show. You just don't fuck with chemistry. It was Howard and Robin and me and Fred and Gary and John in and out, and it was perfect. If Billy Preston was going to sit in on a song, he should have sat in for one song and got the fuck off the stage because the Beatles were fine without him. And that isn't why I left, but that was like, it was just another one of those things. It was like irritating, and it was like, fuck you guys, well, what are you doing? And nobody ever said to me, hey, the total thing was, hey, Jackie, Benji's going to sit in for a while on the news tomorrow. And that was the last that was ever mentioned, that he was going to be there longer, do this, and blah, blah, blah. Are you comfortable with him there? But, and I didn't say anything because it's contrary to what everybody is told. I'm a good soldier and a loyal soldier. For 15 years, I was there in my seat every day with very few exceptions. And I just, and I was just funny. I laughed and I was funny and I did what I had to do. And I just never really understood that. It's like somebody sitting with Fred going, no, Fred, don't play that sound effect. Play this sound effect. He had it covered. No, Robin, don't do that story. Do this story. It was, redundant. It was totally unnecessary, Unless they wanted to remind Robin that, hey, somebody else could be picking out these stories, But it's kind of weird. And once again, I got to say it again, this is not a reflection on Benjy. Hey, I scraped and clawed and did everything I did my whole life to get anywhere doing anything. So the last thing I would ever do would fault somebody for clawing their way and trying to get in. Wally Pipp got a headache and Lou Gehrig played the next 2,000 games. This is the business we have chosen.
I have to ask one more.
That was kind of a long-range comparison. Do you have any idea who Lou Gehrig was?
Never heard of him. I know Cal Ripken, but I don't know this Gehrig. It's another. Are you
making a joke?
I know Lou Gehrig, and I wanted my Norm Macdonald. Again, a huge fan. He did an SNL skit where he dressed up as Lou Gehrig, and they do the whole speech on July 4th, and he starts off, today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Wait, I have a disease that they can't cure, and they've named it after me. I'm unlucky. I'm the unluckiest man on the face of the earth. Thank you. That was the skit. I think that was amazing that he would be able to do a skit like that.
Always right. Lou Gehrig died of Lou Gehrig's disease what are the odds?
That's pretty good.
You can't write a funny joke. That's right up there with, aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how'd you enjoy the play?
Now, who's this Lincoln character you speak of? I don't know him.
You're such an idiot. You must be from the Midwest.
All right, I have two more topics, and we'll be done. And I appreciate your time. One of my favorite moments.
What do I got to do? I got not long to do. I'm jumping to Long Island Sound for another swim. That's all I got on my agenda.
I love swimming. When Rodney Dangerfield comes in and he does an interview, this is when he still has his wits about him. I think it was like 97. He walks out, and then Howard goes, "Oh wait, did you, Jackie? Did you and Rodney have a beef?" And you paid him. Tell me that story. And what did it feel like when Howard called him back in?
I'm going to tell you the entire story. The true story is in my book called Joke Man. The Joke Man Bow to Stern. I've explained this a million times. People still think I'm lying or crazy, and it's just it's so absurd. But the bottom line was that I sent Rodney a joke that he loved, and he bought 4 jokes for $50 a joke. $200. I went to see him at Westbury Music Fair. I still had a ponytail. I was a couple of years from becoming a comedian. And he loved my Tennessee 2-bagger joke, and I sent him jokes from then on. I kept sending him jokes. And he only once in a while, he was very picky. Every comic in New York sold him a joke here and there, but very rarely, But it was $50 a joke. It couldn't have been more known in the comedy circuit. And at some point, I wrote to him and said, "Roddy, I want to reprint my album, and I have no money. Can I borrow $1,000?" And he loved me, and he got so much mileage out of the 2-bagger. I was his pal, so he said, "Ben, no problem." And he said, "Come by," and I went and picked up a check for $1,000, which he lent me. And then over the next however many months or years, he never bought other jokes. And all of a sudden, I saw a joke that he said on Carson, or I heard a joke on an album that I had sent him that he hadn't bought, which I don't care. But, and this is what I didn't say on the Stern Show. I wanted to say, Rodney, you were so drunk and so coked up and always stoned. You didn't know what was going on. He didn't have a bookkeeping section and a secretary. He was just some crazy man. And so I went to see him at Dangerfields, and I met him in a dressing room. I said, "Rodney, you've used a bunch of jokes that you never paid me for." He said, "All right, look, you owe me $1,000, right? Let's figure I used 10 jokes. So you still owe me 10 jokes, $50. You still owe me 10 jokes." So I said, "That's fine by me." And I just wanted to have him acknowledge that I had sent him the jokes. But the idea of, you already paid me half of it in jokes and you owe me 10 more jokes, that was his concept, not my concept, but it makes perfect sense because it's simple barter. If you buy something that costs 25 cents and if you buy 3 of them at 75 cents, it was not rocket science. So he didn't buy anything. We had wound up going to Las Vegas and Fort Lauderdale and had the greatest time in the world. And we flew first class, and he paid for everything. He paid for my hotel room and booze and and Coke and God knows what that all cost. And then I'm doing terrible. And I had a new album I had finished, and I had no money. I wrote to him and said, "Rodney, I got another album I want to put out, and I have no money. Can I borrow $2,000? And he never wrote back, which is his prerogative. Like, who cares? If I ask you to borrow $5 and you say no, that's your prerogative. Who cares? After he came on, he was leaving, and I don't know exactly what Benjy said to him, but Benjy said something about, "Hey, Rodney, you see Jackie in there?" And Rodney's a show business guy. Now, I don't know if he was smart enough, not smart enough, but whether he was, I'm not sure whether he thought they would pick up on this. He says, "Yeah, he still owes me some money, and which I didn't. I kind of did, but God knows what jokes I had sent over the years, whatever. the operative thing being $500 to him was a ridiculous amount of money compared to the amount of money he spent on me, right? So Kansas starts talking to him, and Rodney comes back in. And Rodney says, yeah, and then he has to borrow another $2,000 because Rodney knows he's getting all kinds of airtime. He's got a show that night at the Beacon. And by the time, and there was a writer there from TV Guide, and I said, look, I'll give you $1,000, you know, because everybody's very hard. The worst thing Rodney said, and he was totally lying. He said, oh, I don't know anything about this paying in jokes, which was all he had to say. You know, and every comic in the world knows that, you know, there's, I can name 100 guys that have sold them jokes for $50 a joke. So I wrote out a check to him for $1,000 and walked over and handed it to him. And whoever the writer was from TV Guide, he took the check. I'm sure he still has it on his you know, bulletin board somewhere. But then he said, yeah, and then he asked for $2,000 more, you know, real ballsy, you know. And I had seen him in Fort Lauderdale, and I had, in the afternoon one time at the comic shop, and I said, are you mad at me? He said, no, you know, I thought it was a little ballsy asking for another couple grand, but, you know, I didn't want to give it to you. I said, well, that's fine. He said, yeah, too bad. You know, it was the best fucking joke I ever had, blah, blah, blah. He goes back in and starts talking, and he tells Howard how I had asked him for another $2,000. By the time Rodney left the show that day, Howard had me owing him $3,000, which, number one, isn't a lot of money to Rodney Dangerfield or to anybody, really. But, of course, I didn't owe him $3,000, and yet he answered my request for the $2,000. But anything like that was never going to find its way onto the air with Howard. And I wasn't going to go, Rodney, you know, you were so coked up, you know you never gave me that money. And he never said he did. Just that's how Howard would, if you went back and listened to it, I'm sure, you know, I didn't go back and listen to it because I'd just get crazy. But to this day, if I go out, somebody will say, Jackie, you want me to buy you a beer? I know you ain't buying one, you cheap bastard. Rodney's dead for 5 or 10 years. People send me emails, pay back Rodney, you cheap fuck. You know, like, we're just funny. It was great theater. But that's the absolute truth of the whole matter. And a lot of people say, God, it was so interesting to read it in the book because it makes total sense when you read it. But that was, you know, I don't fault that because that's Howard's genius. You know, he had the whole world thinking I was cheap and that I was angry and that I was no fun and I had no friends. And, like, my friends were, like, being flabbergasted because I couldn't be more generous. I'd have 200 people at my house and feed them all lobster. And Howard say, oh, Jackie's so cheap, there wasn't enough butter for the lobster kind of thing, you know, which is just, but if he, you know, he's like Trump. If he can make people believe stuff, you know, more power to him. You know, I made a lot of money and had a lot of fun. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, it was great times. Again, I love catching up with you. Do you have a joke you want to tell before we go? Do you have a favorite joke off the top of your head?
So a girl goes to a high school prom, and the next day she's at the beach, and she sends her mother a text. Mom, the prom is great, but now I'm at the beach, Mom, and I'm freaking out. I got cum in my hair. So her mother sends her back a text. Honey, I'm glad the prom was good. Listen, sometimes when you're blowing a guy and they want to shoot on your face, they'll pull their cock out of your mouth to shoot on your face. Honey, they can't really control where it goes. And sometimes some accidentally goes in your hair. It's not a big deal. Just jump in the water. It'll wash right out. And her daughter sends her back a text. Mom, thanks for the information, but I meant to type gum.
I thought you were going to say comb, not cum, but either way it works. I like it. It's fun. Yeah, I told you my...
Cameo.com/Jackie Martling. I'll say happy birthday, tell a joke, whatever you want to do. The Joke Man, Bow to Stern. It's available on Amazon, on Kindle, and people love the audio version of the book because it's like having me in the car again, they say, which is kind of fun. And that was really fun recording that. And what else? I also do jokes on the David Feldman podcast. That's kind of narrowcast. He's a very, very talented, very funny guy. Do you know him?
No. But you tweet every day at 4:20, right? Is that still a thing?
Oh, yeah. I still tweet jokes every day at 4:20 p.m. International Marijuana Time. And I do podcasts, and Yeah, I haven't worked a gig in a long time. There's no gigs here. They're trying to have them here and there, but they're like a 4-hour drive away for no money, and I'm some of these guys are doing drive-in shows, but people just want to get out of the house. So I don't fault anybody who does anything. I really don't. I don't want to start showing my documentary at drive-ins because they say that there's a good way for the people to communicate from the car via text or whatever. So maybe we'll do that. I'm not sure.
Well,
but life is good. I got a beautiful girlfriend. I live on the water. I swim a couple times a day, and we eat like pigs. And my niece has 1-year-old twins, and the world is fantastic, except for the small detail that it's falling apart. So I got survivor's guilt, Brad. I'm a happy camper, but I don't feel like I have the right to be because I wish I could do something, but I don't know what I could possibly do.
You said you do a lot of swimming. Watch out for that gum. You don't want to get that gum in the hair.
I don't want any of that gum in my hair.
Jackie, this is always fun, and I'll keep an eye out for that documentary. And once we get closer, hopefully we'll have you on again. We'll talk about that. I really enjoy talking with you every time here. Always a good time.
Check back in anytime. I love doing your show, and I know I talk too much, but that's what I'm here for.
That's what we all do. This is Here's the Pitch. That was Jackie the Joke Man Martling, and Masses Restaurant is our sponsor here, stlmasses.com.
Here's the pitch. I got a Here's the Pitch joke.
Do it.
It's 1956 World Series, and Don Larson's on the mound. And he calls Yogi Berra out to the mound. He says, Yogi, will you do me a favor? Will you button up your fly? I'm getting mixed signals.
Drop the mic. Thanks for watching.